Hey guys, what's up? Sermo11 here with my review of Invincible Fight Girl. This was originally a Cartoon Network show, but due to the merger with Discovery, things got kind of weird. Shows were going to get canceled, such as this show and My Adventures with Superman, but Adult Swim saved those two shows. Invincible Fight Girl is a show about a girl named Andy. I think the setup for this show is pretty interesting, so I'll try to avoid any spoilers, but basically Andy has wanted to become a wrestler all her life, but she lives in a place where everyone is basically training to be an accountant. It's kind of a silly setup, but I think that it's a good reflection of the world because some people are set up by their families who have their best interests in mind and want them to become something like a doctor or an engineer. It might not be what the child wants, but it will keep the money coming in and keep them successful. So some things happen and now Andy is on her path to becoming a wrestler. The show is just the beginning of her wrestling journey as she meets different wrestlers and we see Andy trying out some of the moves that she learned on her own. I think the concept of being a wrestling show is already unique, but these characters are actually fighting, which I think is genius. I am not a fan of wrestling, but I think having them fight and also do wrestling moves was the best way to do this idea. The three main characters for the show are Andy, Craig, and Mikey. Andy so far seems like your standard main character. She's a dreamer. She fights for her friends and people in trouble. She's there to help. I would say that she was a likable main character. Craig is a scammer type of character who becomes Andy's manager for her wrestling career. Mikey is an interesting one. This is a slight spoiler. I just need to say it to talk about the character, so just maybe skip ahead 20 seconds if you don't want to hear it. It's not really a big deal, but I put the spoiler warning there anyway. You have been warned. So, Mikey is 8 years old. I didn't like this idea. I would actually say that I really didn't like this idea. I don't know if this was supposed to be an anime sort of reference where a person looks older than their age, or there are also some anime things where the character looks younger than their age. I don't really know why this was done. Mikey's voice also sounds very young, which I stopped noticing by the end of the show, but it's just something I feel like is still worth mentioning. For some reason he's 8, and I don't know why. It seemingly serves no purpose, and it's just kind of strange. Again, the only thing I can think of is Mikey being like an anime sort of reference. But otherwise, I don't really know. I don't know why this was done. Another character is Quesa Poblana. She's a famous wrestler in the world. She's kind of the Master Roshi, Jiraiya, Kisuke, Yoroichi type of character in the show. This might be a weird complaint, but I just found her name to be a bit strange. I don't know if this is an actual name out there in the world somewhere. If it is, I apologize. I don't know if it's just like a wrestling name or something. I've just never heard this name before, and sometimes when I heard the character say it, I didn't really know what they were saying. A character I really liked was MBrandon. I hope to see more of him in the story. I really liked his performance. I think his actor did a great job. For the art and animation, I think the show overall looks great. I like the art style. It looks really good, and I guess this is basically a American anime. The art style is close to anime. It also kind of reminds me of Scott Pilgrim art-wise, which also is anime inspired. I thought the animation was good, but I have seen some complaints. I don't like seeing those sort of things before I fully formulate my own thoughts because it can influence me. I think that some people online can look at things way too harshly and put things in a different perspective that might not be needed. I think that the animation for me was only really an issue during scenes where they were trying to do the the Dragon Ball Z sort of thing. When they were kind of doing that in some of the fight scenes, it just kind of seemed like the animation was repeating. So, wasn't the biggest fan of that. I also don't like that when Dragon Ball Z does it or Dragon Ball Super does it. So, Just putting that out there. I will say that during episode 7, I feel like the animation just kind of was slow for that fight. I didn't really like that. I feel like people shouldn't be too harsh, but really those were the only 2 issues I had with the animation. I feel like people shouldn't be too harsh, as it was a miracle that this show even came out. If it does well, I'm sure they'll get more money or whatever they need to improve the animation if you do have any issues with the animation. But in positive news, episode 4 was hyped up even by people that worked on the show, and they were not wrong. This was a great episode and it looked great. I also think that the last 2 episodes also look really good. So some of my favorite moments were, of course, episode 4. I really liked that fight, and it really showed what this show can do, and I think it showed where this show is going. So really enjoyed that. I liked seeing Quesa Poblana's effect on the world and how her wrestling style was seen in different ways by different people. I feel like that little story arc in the middle of the show was really interesting, and I like that it doesn't seem like that story is done. That leads me into another point. I like that things don't conclude neatly at the end of every episode. It's like anime. If we're about to do a fight, we might just save it for the next episode. We might build up to the fight. We might have story elements come back. That was something that I enjoyed about Invincible Fight Girl. Of course, the characters having powers and actually fighting in the ring was good. I like having the actual fighting plus the wrestling. Like I said earlier, that was a genius idea. I also like how the wrestling matches start. I think that's a cool idea. It kind of makes them like a big event, and it's just very cool. I like the final episode. If you know, you know what I'm talking about. Moving on to anime's influence on this show. This is a part of the show that I really wanted to talk about, and this might actually be the longest section of the video because there's just a lot to say about this. The show is definitely inspired by anime. I believe the creator said he grew up watching Bleach and Naruto. The show is inspired by Dragon Ball Z and Hunter x Hunter, but also inspired by Naruto, Tiger Mask, Hajime no Ippo, and Haikyuu. I believe it was stated that the last 4 that I just mentioned are more so inspirations from the crew overall and not just the creator. I think this show is almost too inspired by anime. I like anime. If I ever got to create something, of course it would be inspired by anime. But I feel like this show did too much of that. For example, the show uses Dragon Ball Z effects for its punches. I don't like that. The punches don't have weight when you do things like that. So I would personally say, just cut all that. I believe in the last few episodes, there were less Dragon Ball Z effects, or there were none. So I would say just cut those out, add in regular punching sounds, and that would personally be better for me. If I'm remembering correctly, there might have been a scene screaming or yelling at the sky at some point. I feel like that was not hitting hard for me. That's another thing that anime does. Also, there's a scene where someone says something nice or offers a good message to another character, and that surprises them and the area around them turns white. It's an anime thing. If you don't watch anime, it is an anime thing. I feel like this moment wasn't very impactful for me, so I feel like the whole white background thing wasn't really an earned moment. I'm not trying to be super harsh, but that was just another issue I had with it. I think that using anime expressions are fine. A lot of cartoons do this. One I just watched uses anime expressions, and even shows that don't look like anime or look super close to anime also use like the anime expressions. If we want to talk about a good way that I felt like Invincible Fight Girl used anime influence or anime references, was episode 4. I really liked episode 4. I think episode 4 was very well done, and I'm trying to avoid spoilers, but I really liked all of the anime sort of moments in that fight. I think with anime influence, and when you're creating something that's inspired by anime, there has to be meaning behind the things that you do. And I would say for this show, I question the meaning behind some of these things that they've done with the anime references. I liked what they did with the arc in the middle of the show until they went way too close with a Dragon Ball Z reference. I just feel like it was way too much. It's very on the nose. I don't want them to change it because they've already done it, so please stick to your idea. But it's just kind of something in the future to keep note of. I'm curious on what direction the voice actors were given for this show. Overall, everyone did a good job, of course. I'm not going to complain too hard about any performances or anything like that. I think some people can get way too specific when they do that. I'm just kind of curious on if this was directed more so like an anime or a cartoon. Some of the efforts during some of the fights sounded more like cartoon than anime, which is fine. I think the whole, I'm going to look at my opponent. Every time they use their special move, they turn their foot to the right. I just have to take advantage of that and win. I feel like moments like that were done well, but I didn't really like it from the villain in episode 1 or 2. So just a minor complaint with that whole situation. I'm not sure if this is the right section to include this, but I think the show introduced powers too soon. I love when shows have powers. I love when cartoons have powers. I love when anime has powers. But Invincible Fight Girl does show from episode 1 there will be powers. You know, there are powers in this universe. I think that once you introduce powers, once you start giving characters powers, you can't go back on that decision. You can't go back to regular wrestling or anything like that. So I do feel like the powers were introduced too early in this world, and maybe that would have been cooler for a season 2 or something. So next I'll be going over a few things that aren't super negative, but just things to discuss that I haven't already. I think that starting your character off in a world where characters are already fighters can be rough. I feel like sometimes Andy was too good for someone who hasn't had experience besides on her own. This is another reference to the middle arc with the big Dragon Ball Z reference. I think for things like this, as a viewer, I might just have to relax and say, hey, it's okay for her to be able to do a few things already. Who knows if Andy wins any fights this season, but if she does, I just don't know if it's earned. She's kind of a punching bag too, which is cool, but I feel like if you're a punching bag, you need to lose the fight. I get what they're doing with the whole old master thing with Quesa Poblana, but I don't get how she got so old so fast when Andy only watched her a few years prior. At least to my understanding, that's what's going on. Andy is still a kid, right? I don't get why she changed so much. I almost question if that was the same character. I thought that was going to be a big plot twist that that's not actually the master that she's looking for. Overall, the show was good. I hope I wasn't too hard on the anime points. I think it's okay to be inspired by anime, but do more of your own original things. You don't have to reference so hard to anime. The settings and worlds are unique concepts. I like that. I can see the Hunter x Hunter inspiration looking back on it. The setup also kind of reminds me of the random starts to some webtoons. I like the whole island idea. That was very cool. I think they're building up to this, but I'd like to see more main characters with Andy that can fight. Some of the other characters in the story have their own teams or they're part of a duo, so it would be nice to have someone join the main cast that can also fight in addition to Andy. MBrandon is a cool character. I really like that character. I liked Bertie too. Those are actually my two favorite characters in the show. I feel like this show could definitely get a few seasons out of this idea. The world can go places, and they've done some cool stuff with the characters and their lives and their backstories. That's all I'm saying. If you know, you know. Episode 4, the big Dragon Ball Z reference, the final 2 episodes, all good backstories. I liked how everything came full circle in the end. I hope the show gets more seasons, but if they don't, this is a good first season, and I feel like things wrapped up pretty well. If you've seen Invincible Fight Girl, what did you think about the show? I tried my best to avoid spoilers, but still discuss things for the people that have seen the show. Hopefully it was a good mix of thoughts. If you haven't seen the show, do you want to try it now? What cartoon should I review next? Anyways, that's it for me. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and like me on Facebook. The links are below. I'm Surma11. See you next time, and peace out.